They trained you to say yes. From the moment you could speak, obedience was currency. You were celebrated not for your defiance, but for your compliance. Every smile you received, every pat on the head, every ounce of love was subtly conditioned on your ability to submit. Be polite, be quiet, be nice, say yes. And so, you did. You said yes when your body screamed no. You said yes to invitations that drained you, to expectations that buried you, to relationships that devoured you. You said yes to survive, because somewhere deep inside, you were made to believe that to say no was to risk everything: love, safety, belonging. But now something has shifted, a silent unrest growing louder each day, a tension between who you pretend to be and who you truly are. It's the sound of your soul trying to escape the prison of your politeness. You're not lost, you're reawakening. And here is the truth you were never taught. The life you want, the one you ache for in the quiet moments, the one that pulses in your chest when the world goes still, is on the other side of no. Not a whispered no, not a reluctant, guilty, half-hearted no, but a bold, sovereign, unapologetic no. A no that reshapes your life like fire shapes steel. Because that no spoken from the depths of your truth isn't rejection, it's resurrection. That no is not an act of rebellion, it's an act of remembrance. A remembering of who you were before the world taught you to disappear inside your own life. Before the layers of expectations, roles, and obligations smothered your instinct. Before your authenticity was traded for approval, that no is the first breath after drowning. The crack of lightning that splits your false self wide open. And yes, it will feel like dying, because parts of you will. The obedient self, the agreeable self, the one who said, I'm fine, while suffocating. The one who nodded, smiled, stayed quiet just to keep the peace. That version of you cannot follow where you're going. You weren't born to be liked. You were born to be whole. But wholeness demands sacrifice. You will have to lay down your addiction to being understood. You will have to endure the sting of disappointing people who benefited from your silence. You will have to walk away from comfort, from validation, from the soft prison of a life built on yes. Because no is not a wall, it's a sword. It severs illusions. It cuts through the lies you've told yourself to survive. Lies like, I'm being selfish, or I'm too much, or I owe them. No, you don't. You owe yourself the truth. You owe yourself the life that ignites your spirit, not the one that slowly smothers it. And that ignition, that fire that burns away everything false, begins the moment you say no and mean it. Not out of anger, not out of ego, but out of reverence for yourself, for your path, for the sacredness of your energy. Because your energy is not infinite. And every time you give it to something unworthy, every time you bend, shrink, or silence yourself just to make others comfortable, you betray the deeper intelligence of your being. You weren't made to be everyone's solution. You weren't built to carry the weight of their expectations on your back like a silent mule. You weren't born to be accessible to anyone who wants a piece of you. You were born to choose, to discern, to say, this is for me, that is not. And that power, the power of choices, awakened the moment you stop defaulting to yes. The moment you no longer see your life as a series of obligations, but as a sacred terrain that only you can govern. You become dangerous, not to others, but to everything falls inside you. Dangerous to the illusions that kept you compliant. Dangerous to the systems that thrive on your exhaustion. Dangerous to the people who only love the version of you that never had boundaries. Because now you have remembered your life is yours. And saying no is how you protect it. No to the roles you never asked for. No to the masks you were taught to wear. No to the endless caretaking that leaves your soul famished. No to the invitations that are not aligned with your purpose. No to the conversations that go nowhere. No to the cheap intimacy that drains instead of nourishes. This is not selfishness. This is sacred filtration. Because when your no becomes clear, your yes becomes holy. Now, you're not saying yes to please. You're saying yes to what expands you, to what aligns with your values, your mission, your essence. You're no longer in survival. You're in sovereignty. And that shift changes everything. Suddenly, your days no longer feel like transactions. Your relationships no longer feel like performances. Your time is no longer spent managing other people's emotions, but sculpting your own destiny. That is the transformation. The moment you stop being the person who says yes just to be liked and become the person who says no because you love yourself too deeply to keep lying. This is the beginning of integrity, not the watered down moralistic kind taught in classrooms, but the kind that lives in the marrow of your bones. The kind that whispers, I will not abandon myself just to be accepted. Because what is acceptance worth if the price is your truth? What is belonging worth if you must amputate parts of your soul to receive it? You see, the world has taught you to fear being alone. But what it didn't tell you is that solitude isn't emptiness, it's sacred ground. It's the place where you reclaim what was lost, your voice, your boundaries, your instinct, your fire. And you can't access any of it if you're still addicted to being needed. There is a kind of death required here. Not of your body, but of your false self. The one that nodded through discomfort. The one that tolerated disrespect in the name of harmony. The one that kept quiet while your spirit howled. That version of you cannot walk into the life that was truly meant for you. So let it die. Let it burn. And from those ashes, a deeper self begins to rise. A self that isn't built on performance, but on presence. A self that doesn't negotiate its worth in exchange for love. A self that no longer apologizes for existing. This is what it means to be free, not rebellious. Not defiant, but deeply in tune with what is real for you. And the deeper you go into that realness, the more impossible it becomes to keep betraying yourself just to be polite. Politeness won't save you. Approval won't fulfill you. Being liked won't bring you peace. Only truth can do that. And the truth often begins with the north, kind that feels like fire at first, but becomes light. The kind that shakes your foundation, but then builds a sanctuary. A no that says, this is not my path, this is not my rhythm, this is not my truth. Because when you finally stop giving yourself away, you come home to yourself. And the life that's waiting on the other side of that homecoming, it's not ordinary. It's not quiet. It's not small. It's sacred. That sacredness, it doesn't shout. It doesn't perform. It hums quietly, powerfully, like the pulse of something ancient remembering itself through you. Because when you begin to live from the inside out rather than the outside in, everything changes. You stop chasing. You start attracting. You stop negotiating. You start deciding. You stop managing other people's opinions. You start honoring your own voice. And suddenly life feels different. Not easier, but clearer. Because clarity is what comes when the noise falls away. And nothing clears your path faster than the sacred no. The no that uproots people-pleasing at the root. The no that ends the cycles you were too afraid to break. The no that says, I refuse to betray myself one more time, even if it costs me your comfort, your approval, or your presence. That is not a loss. That is a liberation. Because the price of peace is always discomfort. Not the discomfort of chaos, but the discomfort of becoming real in a world addicted to the fake. You cannot become who you truly are and remain who they want you to be. Carl Jung once said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And that terror That's what you feel when you first begin to say no. Because no forces you to see all the places where you've said yes just to avoid the weight of your own authenticity. But what happens when you stop avoiding? When you look your fear in the eye and say, I won't shapeshift anymore. That is the moment the false self begins to fracture. And in its place, something unbreakable begins to form. Not hard, not cold, but unshakable, rooted, deep. Because the person who learns to say no with clarity, with love, with truth, that person is no longer at the mercy of the world. That person is no longer tossed by the waves of other people's expectations. That person has become sovereign. And from sovereignty, everything flows. Purpose, focus, peace, depth. You become a presence that doesn't need to prove, perform, or please. You simply are. And that, in this world, is the most radical act of all. Because in a world obsessed with access, where everyone wants a piece of you, where your time, your mind, your soul are constantly being bargained for, the rarest power is to protect your inner temple. To say, not everyone gets to come here. To draw the line and mean it. To stop offering yourself like a public service. And that boundary, that invisible yet immovable facade, terrifies people who once fed off your endless availability. They will call it selfishness. They will accuse you of changing. They will mourn the version of you who said yes to everything except yourself. Let them grieve what you are no longer willing to be. Because this path, the one you're walking now, it doesn't lead to popularity. It leads to power. Not power over others, but power over your own life. The kind of power that can't be taken, only claimed. Quietly, inwardly, through every sacred no that says, I refuse to abandon myself just to be digestible to you. That kind of power can't be faked. It can't be mimicked. It's not loud or flashy. It's not wrapped in applause. It is still, like a mountain, unbothered, rooted. And in that stillness, something ancient awakens. You begin to hear the voice beneath the noise, the one that was always there, whispering truths you were once too afraid to act on. The one that said you were not made to please, you were made to become. To become someone who honors energy like currency. To become someone who knows that every moment is either invested or wasted. To become someone who would rather walk alone in truth than be surrounded in pretense. Because saying no is not about rejection. It's about redirection. It's how you stop living on autopilot and start designing a life that is truly yours, defined, not by obligation, but by intention. And that intentional life, it begins the moment you stop negotiating your worth. The moment you look at a world that keeps asking for more of you and finally say, no, not this time. Not because you are hard, but because you are whole. And you will no longer fracture yourself for people who only knew you in pieces. Because this sacred no is not abstract. It's not a concept to be admired from afar. It is a living decision, made in the smallest, most ordinary moments, the kind no one else sees, but that shape the very foundation of your life. Like when your phone rings and you see their name, the person who only calls when they need something, who never asks how you're doing, who leaves you drained every time, and something in you tightens. That old voice urges, be nice, pick up. You don't want to seem cold. But the new voice, the one you're still learning to trust, whispers, no, not today. That is not rudeness. That is spiritual hygiene. Or when a friend invites you to an event, a party, a dinner you don't want to attend, you feel your body tense, already anticipating the forced laughter, the shallow conversations, the disconnection. But the people pleaser in you fights back. Say yes, don't disappoint, don't be difficult. And yet deep down, you know every yes to them is a no to your own peace. And in that moment, you choose silence. You choose space. You choose yourself. That is not selfishness. That is maturity. Or at work, when a colleague dumps a task on your desk, assuming without asking that you'll handle it, just like always, and you've always said yes, haven't you? You've always been the dependable one, the responsible one, the one who says yes while resentment grows like weeds inside you. But now you take a breath, you lift your head, and you say calmly, no, that's not something I can take on right now. And for the first time, the world does not collapse. That is not confrontation. That is reclamation. These are the everyday crucibles where your false self is tested, where your old patterns cry out for revival, where guilt claws at your chest, where fear whispers, you're going to lose people. You're going to be alone. But here's the brutal, liberating truth. If your relationships depend on your self-abandonment, they are not relationships. They are transactions. And your soul was not born to be a commodity. It was born to be a force that doesn't ask, will they be upset if I say no? But instead asks, what is true for me in this moment? Because this is where the real transformation begins, not in the grand gestures, but in the small, sacred refusals that protect your time, your peace, your power. You are not meant to be a container for everyone else's needs. You are not the background character in your own story. You are the architect. And architects don't say yes to every brick just because it's offered. They choose with precision, with vision, with discipline. So should you. And discipline, true discipline, is not the grind they taught you. It's not about pushing through exhaustion, forcing a smile, or making yourself smaller for the comfort of others. No. True discipline is energetic sovereignty. The refusal to leak your power into things that do not build you. It's the unglamorous decision to decline the call when your nervous system is begging for quiet. It's turning down the opportunity that looks good on paper but smells like self-betrayal. It's walking away from conversations that exist only to drain, to provoke, to perform. Discipline is recognizing that your time is sacred, not because you are busy, but because your energy is finite, and where you put it is your life. Think about it. Every yes is a contract. Every yes is an agreement, whether spoken or implied. I give you my time. I give you my energy. I give you access to my attention, my spirit, my space. And the question is not whether that yes is convenient. The question is whether it is true. Is this exchange aligned with your purpose? Does this commitment reflect your deepest values? Or is it simply another escape from discomfort? Most people aren't tired because they're doing too much. They're tired because they're doing the wrong things, saying yes to things that deplete them, involve them, use them, confuse them. Your exhaustion is a compass. It's pointing somewhere. And if you keep overriding it with just one more yes, you will never hear the map your soul is trying to give you. That map, the one etched in silence and inner knowing it, always leads to the same doorway. No. No to urgency that isn't real. No to being responsible for other people's feelings. No to the identity you created just to survive. Because beyond that, no is not a void, it's vision. Clear, radiant, untangled vision. The kind of clarity that only emerges when you stop being everything for everyone. It's in that sacred space that your real life begins to emerge, not the life handed to you by culture or crafted through obligation, but the one that feels like breathing again. The one that makes sense in your bones, even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else. And yes, it will cost you. But the price of authenticity is far less than the cost of regret. So here you are, standing at the threshold of your own becoming. The world behind you, the one built on performance, politeness, self-erasure still whispers. It still tugs at your sleeves with guilt, with nostalgia, with the seduction of old roles. But you know, deep down, you cannot return there. Not without bleeding. Not without dying a slow death of your truth all over again. Because once you've tasted freedom, Even the softest cage begins to rot. And freedom begins with no. The no that is not cruel, but clear. Not rebellious, but rooted. Not a reaction, but a revelation. The moment you stop giving your sacred yes to everything is the moment you reclaim your name in this world. And don't let anyone shame you for it. You were not born to be agreeable. You were not born to bend. You were born to stand clean, conscious, grounded in your own authority, in your own rhythm, in your own deep, undeniable truth. So say no when your body says no. Say no when the conversation isn't safe. Say no when the invitation smells like self-abandonment. Say no, not because you are angry, but because you are awake. Say no, and let the pieces fall where they may. Because the ones who truly belong in your life will never be threatened by your boundaries. They will rise to meet them. They will honor the power in your clarity. And those who don't were only ever in love with your silence. You don't need everyone to understand. You don't need to explain yourself anymore. You just need to choose yourself, relentlessly, unapologetically, without guilt. And that choice, that sacred, unwavering choice, is how you build a life that feels like truth, that breathes like purpose, that roars like freedom. The life you want, the one that's calling you louder every day, it's not on the other side of more effort, more tolerance, more endurance. It's on the other side of no. So say it. Let it echo. Let it burn through every false layer. Let it become your compass. Because the moment you say no to what you're not is the moment the world finally meets who you truly are. And that moment is the beginning of everything.